All right, welcome back. This week's dry fire and live fire session is now going to be focusing on drawing from concealment if you carry in the 3 o'clock position. Last week we talked about appendix carry, and we talked about how there are a lot of different techniques for all of the draw techniques out there, but I'm going to be sharing some common ones. So as you continue your journey, and if you pick up new techniques, see what you can do to add it to this baseline. This is assuming that you don't really know how to draw, and if you're picking up some tips, then you probably might pick up a gem here or there that maybe you haven't heard of. When it comes to drawing from any position, there's going to be a lot of commonalities among the different videos that we create once your hands marry. So we're not going to spend a lot of time once our hands marry. After taking the pistol out of the holster, we're going to marry our hands, and everything at that point becomes very similar. But I do want to reiterate what we talked about in the first video, just so that we don't have to cover it again in this video and in subsequent videos about the draw. When our hands are going to meet, typically, you're going to find two types of presentations, or when you're going to push out your gun, you're going to have people who, I'm going to take out my pistol right here, this is dry. You are going to have people who push out their gun in a 45-degree angle, and this is typically going to be faster, right? It's a straight line from where you start to where you want to be, okay? And your muzzle is downrange, you can still take shots if you need to. Another method too, if you see this taught a lot in the tactical realms, where you're going to bring that pistol up close to the chest level, even eye level, then punch out, more like an L, right? There's a time and place for both techniques, but just keep that in mind that once your hands marry, you're either going to probably use one of those two techniques, and we shared a third variation. That's if you're really up close. The threat is up close. You could possibly do this, right, up close and take these contact shots, close contact shots, but if they're really, really close and you don't want them to grab your gun, you may take your gun out of your holster and then bring it into retention. This is not a retention shooting video, but the idea is you're keeping the gun away from your threat, and then you can take shots from this position and then work your way to make space and get to your sights. Okay? And that is when they are really up close, because the chances of you hitting those point blank shots are very, very, very high. With that out of the way, let's dive into drawing from the 3 o'clock position. I'm not going to dive deep into your garments or how to set up your holster for 3 o'clock position in depth, but I did want to discuss a few things before we get to the actual draw stroke, a common way to approach a 3 o'clock. So a lot of people who carry 3 o'clock will typically have a flannel over a gun that is out in the open. So it might be something like this, okay? Just so this gun is out here, so it's easy to access, and they'll have a flannel, or a button up where they can get that out of the way easily, okay? I am a t-shirt guy, pretty much, so I would do this. Now, I don't typically carry 3 o'clock, and my setup is not, what I'm wearing right now, and the holster I'm using is not set up for 3 o'clock. As you can see, this is jutting a little bit out here, but let's assume this was already set up for me, okay? And you can't really see it printing, because again, the video is focused more on the draw stroke. But I did want to mention that when you are carrying 3 o'clock here, you're probably going to want to mess around with the cant, because that will also dictate how much printing you have with your grip. You want to experiment with the height, the ride height. I'm using a better holster, which you can adjust all that, the cant, how high the holster is and all that relative to the belt. You probably also want some space here from the grip to your belt. You don't want it to be completely flush. Everyone's style is going to be a little bit different, but you probably don't want that. And also, when it comes to placement, I want to share something here. With 3 o'clock here, notice it's right by my hip bone, and it pushes it out. Okay, so a consideration is you might want to adjust where this belt is, or the gun. Really, again, get it up high maybe, so that it is now being hidden. Maybe a lot of this grip is going to be hidden in this indentation, in the space where your waist, your upper body kind of tapers down. So you might want to experiment with that. Assuming you have everything set up, let's now work on defeating the garment. When you're carrying concealed from the 3 o'clock position, you have the option of defeating your garment with 1 or 2 hands. I find it much easier to do it with just 1 hand, but you still have the option to do 2. The same thing goes, though, you need positive control of this garment, even if you're just using 1 hand or your support hand to defeat the garment. if you decide to use your support hand, you will need to really reach around. Some of you might not be as flexible, maybe, you know, whatever it is, this might be uncomfortable, but you want to be able to grab in line with your pistol as much as possible because we want to pull up, straight up. Just like we did with the appendix here, pulling straight up, that's what we want to do so that the garment doesn't get snagged on the pistol. This is where we're using two hands here, okay? If I do this, notice the line here, if I'm moving this way, yes, I might clear it a little bit, but there might be some garment left out, you know, hanging here, and that might get in the way, that might impede my draw. So as much as possible, you want to be in line with your pistol as much as possible, get a good grip on your garment, and lift straight up. So that clears everything, and then you can access your pistol. This again assumes you are using your support hand. Okay, it's always going to be situation dependent, but I don't like the fact that I'm tight, you know, I feel bundled up with my support hand doing a 3 o'clock draw. I rather just go with one hand, and I'm going to show that to you in a little bit. But if we are doing the support hand, again, we are lifting straight up after we get aligned with our pistol as much as possible so that it is clear. Then from here, what we want to do is just like your typical outside the waistband draw, which we'll also cover later on, is it's similar to the sense of also the appendix draw, is we are going to grab our pistol. I'm not flaring my elbow like this. I'm not flaring it out here. I'm just bringing it up, okay? Bring it straight back, okay? Just like I wanted to elbow someone here, maybe they were tight in the back of the line, I need to create space, or maybe they're pushing me. I'm driving that elbow back, and then it's going to come down to establish my touch point here. Now, if you have the space here, I recommend getting your fingers, your 3 fingers here, in between your belt and your grip. So I'm coming down and I'm touching that back plate again with my thumb, this right here. Okay, just like we did in the appendix carry position. If you have a beaver tail, you would touch the beaver tail a little bit. Some people will be able to bring their elbow back and immediately grip all the way around. Body type is going to matter a lot, the pistol you're using, size of your gun, all that, okay? But if you can't do that, drive the elbow back, get those fingers in between the belt and the grip, and then have that touch point nice and high on the beaver tail or the back plate. Notice I'm not like this. See this right here? How there's a lot of space right there? I don't want that. I want to be nice and high so that when I draw, okay, just so you can see what happens here. So let's say this is in the holster and I'm here. As I draw, this wraps around, okay? So I'm here, side view here, if I do this, notice again, it gets caught. So I need to get far, I raise up, I'm going to bring my elbow back, drive down, fingers are in between the belt and the grip here, and then I have my web of my hand high on the beaver tail, and then I'm touching the back plate or the beaver tail here. This is our starting point. So as you're doing your dry fire reps, okay, you can start off with just these 2 motions here. If you want to start off with one motion, just defeating the garment, then that's fine, just so you know you're clearing it. Second would be bring your elbow up and kind of doing that at the same time. Then third, I come down and we just stop here. If you can do this quickly and you do reps of this, everything else is pretty much gravy. Okay, as long as you continue to practice this, I'm not actually a 3 o'clock guy, so it's still a little uncomfortable for me, and this is typically not my setup that would carry 3 o'clock. I'm just doing it for the video. But the idea here is, again, when you find your setup, you're really going to ingrain those reps in and just do this. Because once you get this, pretty much everything else, and notice this, notice I'm showing you, right there I got a little lazy and the garment got caught on the end of the pistol. Okay, not the end of the world, maybe I could bring it back, but it can cause complications, right? So you start off there because later on when you get here, everything else is pretty much the same, like we talked about, okay? So now that we are there, let's say you've done reps of this over and over and you're comfortable, you're consistent getting this here, okay? You don't even have to draw. Then we're going to do the same thing. The next step would be you'd be here and then just raise out the pistol. That's the first thing, okay? As I raise out the pistol, I'm going to wrap my thumb around and then I meet my hands, then everything else is the same that we covered in the previous week. So I'm here, defeat the garment, I bring my elbow out, drive in, get my touch points here, okay? I'm wrapping around the grip, back panel, or the beaver tail. I'm now going to raise the pistol out of the holster, fingers still off the trigger, wrap my thumb around the grip, and at this point I can meet my hands, and now you either go this route, this route, whatever you want. If someone was up close, really close to us here, I'm going to bring it back and shoot from retention as we discussed last week. All right. So that is if we were using our support hand. I already talked about, everyone's going to be different. I personally don't like that. I probably would just use one hand, okay? Now this is, once again, assuming you're wearing a shirt. If you were wearing outside the waistband, outside of your shirt, but a flannel or a button up, then you probably are not going to be using your support hand at all, okay? You are going to be using what I'm going to be showing you with the one-handed draw from 3 o'clock, even with a shirt. It would be very similar, okay? So I'll talk about that. But if you are wearing a shirt and you do the two-handed draw, you want to grip far, okay? So that is the two-handed draw from 3 o'clock. One way, there's lots of different ways to do this. We're now going to be talking about drawing from the 3 o'clock position with one arm, but before we get to that, we want to thank DryFireMag for bringing you today's video. They have a really great training tool that automatically resets your trigger on your striker-fired pistol, and that's a great thing to have when you're doing your dry fire practice, so you can really effectively and efficiently work on your trigger control, which is a huge part of shooting. So if you're not familiar with them, make sure to check them out in the description below. Now let's move on to the one-arm draw from 3 o'clock position. We're starting off with wearing a t-shirt, and I'll talk about if you have, maybe you have this here like this and then a flannel covering it, okay? With the one-arm draw, I find it just easier to do, right? For me, I don't like that feeling of being bundled up with two arms, but here we still need positive control of our garment, and there are two positions I'm going to discuss. Your hands might be here, kind of more center-lined here, or they might be here on the side. Okay, I'm going to discuss two types of draws. If they're up here, we'll discuss that too. Your hands are up here, you have the option now of what you're going to do. But let's just start here. If my hands were kind of in front of me here and I'm carrying 3 o'clock, remember this setup is not really my ideal setup for 3 o'clock. I'm just using it for demonstration purposes, and we're focusing just on defeating the garment and drawing. When I'm here, okay, I want positive control of this garment. Since my hands are here, I'm already going to grab right here at the bottom of the shirt. So once I have positive control, instead of pulling up just like the appendix, if I did this, notice how it's still going to be covered. I want to now pull on a 45-degree angle. And notice how this completely opens this up, okay? As you practice, this is going to become one fluid, smooth motion. But when I'm here, you can break it up. I want to pin the garment. Notice I'm pinning it with my hand here. Okay, so I don't want this garment to fall over the gun as I try to grab the grip here. So I'm here, I pull on a 45-degree angle, I pin it, just like this, and then everything else is the same. I'm going to come down, establish my touch points, my fingers wrap around the grip in between the belt, okay, and the grip, and then I'm touching the back plate here as a reference point. If you are able to wrap your thumb all the way around, then feel free to do so. But once we're here, everything else is the same. Okay, I'm going to now pull up here and my hands marry, then you continue with the presentation just like we've covered in the videos and we reiterated earlier in this video. So once again, if I'm here, okay, I'm here, I'm going to establish my grip and pull on a 45-degree angle so that it clears, all right? 45-degree angle. Then I want to lock my garment in place and then come down. Now I can draw properly. As you get more comfortable with this, as I talked about, this pinning of the garment will be a very fluid motion. See, notice I already have my grip. But as you begin, it will be a step that you separate. So it'll be 1, stop it, here, pin it, then 2. As you get better, there'll be one fluid motion, okay? I'm not going to cover actual drawing of the gun and meeting your hands. It's all the same once you've established that touch point. So here, the dry fire practice might be from here. Okay, this hand could be pushing. I'm going to drive, break it down into parts here, pin, and then get to here, okay? At that point, you would do it for speed, trying to smooth things out, get to here. And then when you're ready, bring it up, and then meet your hands. Now, every time we're doing this hand, you got to be cognizant of the support hand, particularly if you're doing a one-handed draw. You do not want to flag yourself, right? So once I'm here and this pistol is still in a safe direction, but once I'm going to point my gun down range, I need to really be aware of this arm. It doesn't mean you have to bring this in because who knows what might be happening. I might have to push somebody, but you have to have the awareness not to flag yourself. You might shoot yourself, right? So even if I had to push somebody, maybe now I'm pointing at the hips or something like that. Okay, just be aware of that. But if I am bringing my hand in and I want to get my two-handed draw, make sure it's out of the way, establish it, then push out. Okay, so that is if our hand is out here kind of in front, okay? So now if I'm doing the 3 o'clock from here, okay, this is where I don't want to do the same thing, pull a 45-degree angle or anything over the sides because I'm now covering my gun. Now I go back to what we were doing with appendix, pull straight up, pin, everything is the same, okay? So I pull straight up, pin, now I'm here. Nothing changes from what we just covered. It's just now the direction you're pulling when defeating the garment. So that is the difference. The dry fire practice is also the same, whichever method you want. So you're here or here, get to the point where you can smoothly get to this point. Then once you are here, everything else is the same, okay? All right, let's assume you're wearing a jacket or a flannel and you carry your gun 3 o'clock, but you do not have your shirt covering it. This is very simple. It's very similar to the methods we already showed, particularly the one where you're kind of pulling on a 45-degree angle. But here, it's even easier. You're going to grab your flannel and you're just going to pull it. You don't have to do any weird movements here. You're pulling it straight back. That clears it, and then notice I'm still pinning. My forearm here stops the jacket or flannel from coming back down. If I did this, it would cover it, right? So I pull it straight back, pin it, and now I have free reign here, okay? Everything is the same. Establish my touch points, get that holster, watch your support hand, then marry your hands and continue the draw. So this is the method you would use. You're gonna grip right in the middle, pull it straight back, pin, and then get your grip. Nothing else changes. Now let's assume that you have this. You have your garment over here, and then you also have a flannel or a jacket. Different ways, different approaches to this. One thing I like to use is if I can get rid of both in one go, I do that. So I've seen people do, like clear this, then they use the shirt also. Notice this here, and there's nothing wrong. This works for you, then go ahead. They'll clear here, then here, okay? And this is going to depend on the clothing too. If it's flimsy, light, whatever, this is why you have to always test depending on what your technique is. But I would like to do the first thing I shared with you. I would be right here. If I can do this, if my hands are straight, and I pull straight back. Or I should say at a 45-degree angle. That defeats the flannel or the jacket as well as the shirt in one go, and now I'm here. Okay, so again, I'm here with my hands kind of in front of me, so I'm going to pull in 45-degree angle, pin, and then grip my gun. Okay. Those are options. You can choose whatever you want to. Again, there are people who will teach this, and there's nothing wrong. It's just added steps that might be more secure. Okay. Now, if your hand was out here on the side, I like to do the same thing too. This is just me because this shirt is the undergarment which will control the flannel. So if my hands were on the side here, I just lift it up, okay, and then pin and then go for the gun. All right, but you guys do you. You're going to pick up different techniques. Okay. All right, now let's talk about what if your hands are higher up here. With the appendix, we talked about possibly using our support hand, and we can grip here and then get a clean purchase on that gun. With the 3 o'clock position, I have trouble with that. So I would go directly to the bottom. Your mileage may vary, the length of your arm, all that, the clothing you're wearing, but every time I do this where I'm trying to grab high and I work this, it seems to always catch on the grip. No matter if I'm going straight up, it's not good enough for me. So you can explore that, but for me, I default to always trying to get to the very bottom here. And that might be a pro or con to some of you in terms of, carrying appendix versus 3 o'clock, because now, like I said, it's not going to apply to all of you, but for me, that's another reason why I like appendix too, is because I have different opportunities or different options to defeat my garment. Here with the 3 o'clock, for me at least, I can't really do one from the top here. I can't defeat the garment from the top. So consider that, and if you can do that, explore the techniques we just shared, and you might be able to do that. Okay. Now, when it comes to wearing a flannel, if the gun was out and I'm wearing flannel, it's easy. Just move that flannel out. Okay. If my hands are here, pull it the same way we discussed, and you'll have access to the gun very easily, as long as you pin that jacket or that flannel. All right. I'm going to do a few live fire reps, not every single variation, but just to drive in a few more points. And for those of you who are brand new beginners, kind of give you a process to follow when you're shooting live ammo. As we move into live fire, it's important that you have a lot of dry fire reps first before shooting live ammo. You want to be safe, you don't want to flag yourself, so do your dry fire reps diligently, make sure you're not flagging yourself, and when you feel comfortable, then you can start with live fire. With live fire, you don't have to go fast too. I highly recommend that you go slow first, get everything good, then progressively build on the speed. Whatever technique that you choose from what we covered in this video, just pick one. I'm not going to cover everything because it's already in the video, but just pick one. So if I was here with my hands down here, I already have a loaded gun here. I'm going to work on just breaking it down 2 steps first. I might defeat my garment and just make sure that, okay, everything looks pretty good. I have access to the grip here. Okay, I'm good. All right. Then I would defeat and pin, just like that. So I'm here, defeat and pin. I'm here, so I'm ready to now go down. And then my third step might be defeat and pin and grab. Okay, so here, pin, grab. Remember, I am driving down to this gun, wrapping around the pistol, getting my web of my hand nice and high on the beaver tail, the tang of the pistol, and then I'm touching the back plate, or if you have the possibility, you already wrap around, okay? So that is probably where you'll spend most of your time before you shoot, okay? Meaning you defeat the garment, pin, and get a good grip. Once you are here, then you know you are ready to draw the gun, okay? Notice where my hand is, okay? As you're starting out, my finger's off the trigger. As soon as I draw the gun here, my hand, I'm going to bring it in. Yes, I know in real life this hand might be doing something, but for now, as you're beginning, when I'm ready to draw my pistol, I'm going to bring it straight out with my support hand coming in. I'm still pointing down to the ground here. I'm not flagging anyone. Once my hand is in, I can marry my hands, then everything else is the same, guys. Take single shots, go through your checklist that we've covered in this series, finger off the trigger, and then I reholster safely. So as I'm doing these reps, I would probably just start off here and stop all the time, then grab, okay? When you are familiar, you feel confident, then defeat and then grab, straight to the grab, okay? Then I would stop there. There are two checkpoints here. One, grab your gun and then holster, or you can go straight to grabbing your gun like this, then stop. That is the second checkpoint, okay? That is a little bit more difficult or involved than the first checkpoint or the first variation. But once you grab your gun, then you are clear to draw, marry your hands, take that shot, okay? I'm not covering, what to do on the target, 2 shots, transitions, or anything like that. You can figure that out. The focus right now is just on the draw. So you would do this and just get really comfortable with your draws. It doesn't matter if you are the type who likes to punch out this way or go straight from here, work all methods. Retention I'm not going to cover right now, that would be for extreme close quarters, but you get the idea here. I'm just going slow and smooth to start and then progress with the speed as you feel comfortable. You need to be really aware of what this hand is doing. That's why I mentioned when you are doing this, as I present, this hand is no longer out there, particularly if you're a beginner. Okay? Then marry your hands and go to work. If you're using the two-handed method, which we discussed in this video, then you would bring this support hand as far as you can, bring that up, and then everything else is the same. Once I'm here, my hand stays out of the way, marry, and then take those shots. Before we wrap up the video, I did want to address a point here. You want to get to the point where you're not looking at what you're doing, okay? So marrying the hands, everything, that is happening because you've done a lot of reps dry fire. If you're just starting out, during your dry fire, you can look at everything. Look at everything first. Make sure you have everything. You're doing things slowly and deliberately. And when you're doing that dry fire, then you begin to go faster to the point where you don't have to necessarily look at everything. Now, when you move to live fire, you could, again, if you're brand new to this is, be safe. If you're brand new to this, yes, you might want to defeat your garment, looking at everything, making sure you're doing everything correctly. You are safe, your hand is out of the way, the muzzle is pointing downrange, and then you break the shot. And as you get more and more comfortable, you begin to take your attention away. Where maybe I'm looking at first, but now here, once I have my hand on here, maybe now I'm comfortable with everything. So progressively do this, and you have to be your own judge here. You need to monitor where you're at, and if you're not comfortable, slow things down. If you have to keep on looking at everything in the beginning, that's completely fine too. All right, so that wraps up today's video on drawing from concealment from the 3 o'clock carry position. If you guys have any questions, comments, let us know in the comment section below. As always, if you like the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. See you guys next week.